On today's show, Laura Heywood interviews
Tony Award winner Billy Porter and superstar singer Sarah Brightman. Today I'm going back into my archives to two of my all-time favorite interviews with two incredible artists who have both refused to comply with the standard rules of show business, only to dominate their fields by making up their own rules. Welcome to Laura Heywood Interviews. I am Laura Heywood. First, we'll hear from Billy Porter, a Tony winner for originating the role of Lola in Kinky Boots, currently seen on FX's hit series Pose and dazzling on red carpets everywhere. Then we'll pivot to another superstar of stage and screen, Ms. Sarah Brightman, the original Christine in Phantom of the Opera, the woman who inspired Lord Andrew Lloyd Webber to write the iconic musical, who I sat down with last September to discuss her 15th studio album, Him. These interviews were both recorded at Build Series NYC and are used in with permission from Build, so I'd like to thank them very much. Let's go back in time to 2007. This was before the tuxedo dress at the Oscars and before Pose. Billy Porter was embracing his entangled roots in theater, R&B, and a commitment to challenging convention. He was at Build to promote a new album. Billy Porter presents The Soul of Richard Rodgers. And they actually held a release party, and it doubled as an interview that I had the honor of hosting. I still remain friendly with Billy and his husband, Adam Porter Smith, and it is my great pleasure to bring you this conversation from the Laura Heywood archives, recorded back in 2007.
You guys, Billy Porter's here.
Oh my goodness!
And look what I got.
What on earth have happened?
We're having a party.
I know.
And this is why The Soul of Richard Rodgers, your new album, out today. And we have a lot to celebrate.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
We're going to celebrate the fact that the album's finally available. We just found out this afternoon that it debuted at #2 on the R&B charts.
On the R&B charts, people. The theater people. You know.
And the room is filled with people who love you. So we're just going to dig in. I want to talk about why Richard Rodgers first.
Why Richard Rodgers? Okay, well, I grew up in the Pentecostal church. I grew up singing in the church. And when I got into the 6th grade, I was bused. You know, it was desegregation the second time. So I was bused a half hour away from my house. And, you know, I was separated from my friends. I didn't have anything to do. There were after-school programs, you know, before Reagan started cutting them. So we had those programs, and Rising Sun Middle School was the name of the school. And they had an after-school program called Rising Sun Musical Theater, and I didn't know what theater was. But I went, and they explained to us what a Broadway musical was. The musical was Babes in Arms,
Okay.
which is Rodgers and Hart, which is where My Funny Valentine is from. It's the show My Funny Valentine is from. So, you know, I did that show. I was bit by the bug.
You were in middle school?
I was in the 6th grade.
Okay.
And, you know, and when I think about, like, kindergarten, the first song I learned in school was Doe a Deer.
Right.
You know, 1st grade, the first song I learned was Getting to Know You. So, you know, Richard Rodgers is in our consciousness in a way that I feel like when you see how we've deconstructed it, it makes a difference because you know what the original is.
Right.
And many people know a lot of these originals even when you don't know. You know, I'm gonna wash that man right out of my hair is the shampoo commercial.
Or I looked out the window this morning and automatically started singing,
Oh, what a beautiful morning.
Beautiful morning.
Yeah, so the songs transcend, I think, the limitations of race or, you know, culture or genre. You know, they've been able to transcend that all these years. And so I just think this is the logical next step.
Well, these arrangements are all so fresh and new and soulful.
Yes.
This started out as a concert project on the West Coast, right?
Yes. Susie Dietz, my patron of the arts, and Lenny Beer were producing a show for Reprise, which is a theater company was a theater company out in LA that sort of was the Los Angeles equivalent to encores, which we do here. You know, revivals of things, staged revivals, loosely staged. So they were doing a Rodgers season, and Susie asked me to do a concert, a Soul of Rodgers concert to sort of launch the season. And I pulled everybody together. I pulled all my friends together, and we did it. And that was sort of the basis.
Yeah, you have
for
some
what the
fancy
album
friends.
came out. Yeah, I do have some fancy friends.
They're in this room. They're on the cover of this album. This really is a who's who of theater and pop and R&B music.
Thank you.
Let's talk about the song selection. Richard Rodgers wrote about 900 songs.
Mm-hmm.
You have 12 on this album. I'm going to say that means that we can have countless follow-up albums.
We
But
can
I
have
wanna
countless
know
follow-up albums and
how-
shows.
Yeah, great. Yeah. So how many of those 900 have you learned?
Oh, how many of the 900? Oh, Jesus. I mean, I would probably know about half of them.
Really?
I do. Yeah.
That's pretty incredible.
I mean, you have to have your education.
I wish that I had a fishbowl with all the songs in the that I could just draw one.
You
and
got to
take
have your
there.
education. You have to know where it comes from.
So how did you choose these 12?
The focus for me starting out was love songs.
Okay.
I wanted to talk about love from different angles. So that was where it began. And then it just evolved and deepened as we sort of got people to agree to be on the record. And then, you know, my writing partner, James Sampliner, and myself, it was like, well, what can we do for this artist? You know, we really wanted to align the artists with the right material and the right arrangement. So, yeah.
Can you talk about your relationships with these people? I mean, we don't have to go through all of them, but you've got several Tony winners on here. You've got Grammy nominees.
Okay, I can go down the list real quick.
Okay,
so
great. I want to know how far back you go with these
yeah.
people.
So Renee Elise Goldsberry, I went to college with. I sang at her wedding. Deborah Cox, I just met at a benefit and told her I wanted her to be on the album.
She was like, okay.
Exchange numbers, and she said yes. So
Nice.
I guess Tonys do good things for you in major Broadway musicals because people know who you are, and they like to work, and they want to work with you.
Yeah.
Brandon Victor Dixon and Joshua Henry, of course, I
course,
did
Shuffle
along with
Along.
those guys. Todrick Hall.
Did you meet him through Kinky Boots, or did you know him before?
Well, I sort of knew him from the social media interwebs.
The way people know
We
Todrick.
contacted each other over those things. And I'd met him a couple of times. And then he got cast as Miss Lola in Kinky Boots.
Who we love. I'm
Yes.
my homage to Lola.
So, you know, Mama Lola, daughter Lola. Who else? So Chris Jackson, of course, I've known for years since Patina Miller, Leslie Odom Jr. Were my students at Carnegie Mellon.
Nice job with them.
I did some masterclass teaching and things like that. Lettucey is an old friend who I met through the business a long time ago.
9 Grammy nominations, I believe.
Yes,
Yeah.
and Zaire Park is, so we brought in, I call the ringer, Michael Sandlofer. We call him Lofi. I brought in the ringer as the sort of hands-on sonic producer of the piece. And he brought in Zaire Park for us, who's a rapper.
Yeah, I
rapper.
never would have guessed that there would be fusion of Richard Rodgers songs and rap, but I'm gonna wash that man right out of my hair.
Well,
Is it,
yes. I mean, it's the rap started with when I chose Lady as a Tramp, which was one of the most popular. I was confused by the lyric because it
I've
means
always
something
been
different
confused
now.
by that lyric too.
Yeah, it's like she gets too hungry for dinner at 8. She loves the theater, never comes late. She never bothers for people she hates. That's why the ladies. It's like, so what are you saying?
She's trampy.
Like, yeah, like she doesn't. I don't know. She doesn't like foreplay. She just likes to. I don't know what you're saying. So. I want to honor the women in my life and in the world and explain to the people what the lyric actually means, which is it's about female empowerment. It's about independent women. It's about women being independent and doing what they want to do. So sometimes you got to create context so people can understand what it's about. And that's where the rap came in.
Richard Rodgers wrote so many progressive songs and so many issues that feel really current. And you know, I think You Have to Be Taught is a perfect example of that.
Yeah, when you think about their Rodgers and Hammerstein musicals, you know, if you think about Carousel, it's about domestic abuse.
Yep.
You know, and she stays with him. If you talk about South Pacific, you know, it's about racism. King and I, misogyny and racism, feminism, Sound of Music, you know, they're trying to escape from the Nazis. I mean, you know, they were dealing with big, epic, emotional, hot button issues in their day.
Yeah.
And I wanted to bring a light to that.
There's so many layers of emotion in the lyrics and in the original versions, which I think lends itself so well to the soul and R&B, the layered, smooth, rich vocals and arrangements.
So too. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I just really think every single song on this record, I was like, wow, I never would have imagined it that way, but it fits so perfectly. And in some cases, a track would start and I'd be like, this is beautiful. I don't know this song. And it wouldn't be until the chorus came in and I went, oh my gosh. Yeah. And instead of feeling sort of strange and different, it was like it gave me new insight into what the original versions were
I
about.
think that's, you know, James Sampliner, my writing partner, and myself, we really have worked for many years to embrace the classic with the contemporary. I've always been into the classic because you can't know where you're going until you know where you came from. You can't break the rules until you know the rules, you know, and we never skip that step, you know, so there's never anything that we put into the material that's going to take away from the original intent of the material. We really, really try to stay true to that.
You do a great job with it.
Thank you.
I know you've been performing some of this material live and you've got some additional tour dates coming up.
Yes.
What's the live experience like? Are you performing this track list? Are you mixing in some of your musical theater songs, Little Sex in the Heel?
I do, you know, I do a Kinky Boots medley.
Okay.
And when I go out into the country, I take the boots.
Yeah, I think I saw a picture on your Instagram of them in your suitcase.
You know, that's what people know me for, so you have to give them the boots. But I do a combination of things from my last album, Billy's Back on Broadway, from this album, some soul stuff that's not from theater. But it was really interesting. I just came back from Florida. I just came back from the Midwest. In Indiana, I did like 9 shows in 12 days, and it was really wonderful to go into these places and go into them with love, go into them trying to reach across the aisle and have a conversation about how can we come together as a country, as human beings, and talk to each other and figure out how to love each other unconditionally, because that is the only thing that's going to fix what's going on right now. You know, we got a lot of stuff going on right now that we as Americans have to be present for. And as artists, we are the people who have always been able to reach across that aisle, who've always been able to have those kinds of uncomfortable conversations because it's coming through storytelling, because it's coming through music. And so I'm really honored and blessed to be able to do that.
I bet the audiences are responding in an off-the-charts way.
They are.
Yeah.
They are, and they're grateful. And it's from all different kinds of backgrounds, and you know, it's been really special.
That's great. I know you also did some traveling in Europe recently. I feel like I've been keeping in touch with you just because I follow you on all the social media.
I know.
Was that your honeymoon? You just got married a few months ago.
I got married to my sweetheart. Yes.
Nicely done by
Adam Graham Porter Smith, who's sitting over there. You know, I was in a show last season called Shuffle Along.
Yes.
That closed.
An incredible show.
That closed a little early.
Yep.
So the good news with it closing early is that I got the whole summer to hang out with my now husband, and we went a lot of places, a lot of different places. Yes, we did. In the sun. Yes.
The photos are great, and they're all still up. So I encourage people to check them out. I also would just like to acknowledge these incredible pants you're wearing.
You like my pants?
You have always just had the best style, and I think it actually relates to the album. Like you feel like it feels like you're always just so on the pulse of whatever's going on.
Oh,
whether it's
thank
the
you.
outfits, whether it's the music. Yeah.
I'm trying. You know, theater is a special thing, and I've always wanted to make sure that it crosses over, that the conversation extends beyond simply theater people, but we're in the world. We're in the world, and we are of the world, and we want to be a part of that conversation. I hope this helps with that.
I think that it will. I mean, you're going to get the rap and R&B fans. You're going to get the musical theater fans. You're going to get the
old people, the young people.
I was going to say the old ladies, but I was
love
afraid
the old ladies. I just did 9 concerts for my fans. They're my fans. They're my ladies, and I love them.
Yeah. Do you ever get somebody who's like, this isn't the Oklahoma I know?
Yes, I do.
Uh-huh.
And I say, it's not supposed to be. Uh-huh. It's on purpose. That's on purpose.
Right.
You can turn on the other albums for that.
Right,
This is a new interpretation on purpose.
Look how handsome you look on this album cover. You're welcome. What does it mean to you to finally have this album, this labor of love that you've been working on so long, finally available today?
You know, it's one of the things that I'm so proud of is musically, as a recording artist, you know, coming from all of these different worlds and trying to wrangle what my own voice is inside of it. This is representative of that for me, and I'm very, very proud of that. I'm proud of that.
It's exciting, I bet, to be able to like finally get the feedback.
Yes.
Because when you're listening to it in the studio, you're like, I know this is great, but now
Yes.
everybody can share that with you.
Yes, after all these years.
We're
Yeah,
kicking
it's
it off
great.
tonight. So do you have a favorite song on the record, or is that like asking you to pick, you know, your
I'm
children?
not going to
or
pick
something?
favorites. I'm not going to pick favorites, but I will say the one song that resonates the most right in this moment because of the state of our world, as well as other things, is Carefully Taught. That idea came post-election. That song was not on the record before the election. It came post-election, and India Ari had come to see Shuffle Along, and she is, you know, the person I put on. You know, her music is one of the people that I put on when I need to encourage myself, you know, and so the fact that she came to the show and, you know, she really reached out to me in particular, and, you know, I had the idea for her to do this, and she said yes. And, you know, before the recording, you know, when you listen to the song out of context, in the show, you have context, you know, and so you get to this part in South Pacific, and, you know, the white lady who we've fallen in love with, you know, finds out that the man that she has fallen in love with essentially has black kids, and she rejects him. And it's like the rug has been pulled out from under you. Your breath has been hit out of your stomach. And then the lead, Emil Debek, I believe his name is, sings this song, You've Got to Be Carefully Taught. You've got to be taught to hate and fear. You've got to be taught from year to year. It's got to be taught. It's got to be carefully taught. And when you have context, the lyric makes sense. But when you don't have context, it can sort of sound like you're endorsing it.
You think?
Yeah, if you don't have context, it can.
I just automatically put that song in the context of the world we live in.
Well, yes, of
and,
course.
Like,
some people aren't smart enough for that, as we've learned. So,
touche.
So, sometimes you have to spoon feed the children. And I didn't know how we were going to do it. And I was thinking and racking my brain, and India came in for the session, and I thought it was going to be a solo, first of all. So we get her in the studio, and she informs me that she wants it to be a duet. I was like, well, yes, let me not fangirl out right now and go to the bathroom and warm up. But she stood in front of the microphone and she, her energy, just her grace, her calm, healing Mother Earth energy. And she started this sort of like, and she said, do you have the courage to love somebody? And she just repeated it over and over. And the tears just flew from my eyes because instinctively she understood it needed context too.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
The context, do you have the courage? The question, do you have the courage to love somebody? Because in today's day and age, it is courageous. It's an act of courage. It's an act of resistance to love those who you don't understand. And so the fact that she created that context and that bed for us to just nestle in, it was remarkable. And it's do you have the courage to love is what's the inscription inside our rings for my wedding. So it's a special song for us, yeah.
That was an incredible answer.
I love all of them. I love all of them.
Of course.
I love all of them.
But just, you could have answered that in one word and just said the name of the song. And instead, I'm having trouble holding back the tears just listening to you tell the story about working with her. I also want to touch on Edelweiss because you close the album with it. Is it being released as a single?
It was released as a single on the day of the inauguration.
Got it.
For those of you who know Sound of Music.
And you have I don't know whether it's like a spoken word, sort of a one-line poem in there, or whether you're just underscoring the concept of the show. But
context,
it's the one time that you actually just speak a line on the record. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, yes. Edelweiss was always in the project. Mm-hmm. Once again, after the election, it took on a different meaning. And my idea to have it released on the day of the inauguration was specific and on purpose. Once again, the Von Trapp family sings that song as they're trying to escape Austria before Nazi occupation. So, it was very specific. I was doing it on purpose once again. And I just feel like, the Edelweiss flower, what I say, is one that exists in the harshest of environments. And, it blooms in the cold and snow and reminds us that we can and must flourish in the darkest of times. I know that it can feel dark right now. It just happens like that. The world happens like that. Life happens like that. But do not be afraid. Do not lose hope. It's all we have. It's all we have. We gotta come together. It's the only thing we got. So that's what I wanted the song to be.
It resonates and is so beautiful, and I'm so glad that you're using that to create beauty and to create art. And I think that this album is its own Edelweiss.
Oh, thank you so much.
We have time to take a couple of questions from the audience.
Sure, yes.
Hey,
Hi.
Billy. Hey. Thank you for being here. Congrats on the album.
Thanks for having me, AOL Build.
Yeah.
Woo.
So this is kind of a two-part question. On your last album, Corner of Soul and Broadway, you sing...
Two albums ago.
Two albums ago. You sing Last Midnight.
Yes.
And I forget if you mentioned this on the album, but is it true that you were in talks to play the witch in the revival?
Yes. I had auditioned for another part. I was called back for the witch. It went very, very, very far. The conversation went very far.
Which production was this for?
The revival. The revival in 2001.
Okay.
So if you remember, 9/11 happened, and I did not.
Mm. Are you, is that something you're still interested in?
No.
What was the second part of your question?
I want to do my own shit now.
Woo!
Well, I just want to say, I wish that would have happened because that would have been so epic. But the second part of my question is, if you could pick a role, and regardless of gender, race, age, whatever, is there a role that you want to dig your teeth into, and why?
I did it. It's called Miss Lola and Kinky Boots. It could never have happened. Kinky Boots could never have happened for me in the way that it has if I didn't make the choice years ago to really, really dig my heels in. And when
No pun
everybody told me,
intended.
no pun intended, when everybody told me no, when everybody told me who I am and what I am would never work, I did not believe them, and I kept moving forward. And that is the dream. It doesn't get no better than that. It doesn't get no better than Miss Lola.
And the show is still going strong, 4+ years in. And every performance of Lola around the world.
Around the world.
Is
Around the world.
an homage to the creation that you made.
It's the
on that
original dream.
stage.
It's the original dream come true. It's like you can't dream bigger. It's like my mother always says, God has bigger plans for you than you could ever dream for yourself. I spent so many years trying to fit myself, in other people's stuff and other stuff because it was the only thing that I could see. The only thing I could see was me being the first Black Bobby and company or the first Black so-and-so and such and such. It never occurred to me that I could be the first, period. And that's what Kinky Boots is about.
Do you think you'll ever step back into those red boots on the Broadway stage?
Say that one more time.
Do you think you'll ever step back into those red boots on the Broadway stage? Would you go back and revisit Lola?
We can think about it. We'll think about it.
So
That's
you're
all
not
I'm going to say.
saying- So you're saying there's a chance.
There's a chance. There's a possibility that something like that could happen.
All right, excellent. Do we have another question from the audience?
Who got something else? Yes.
Yes. Hi. I'm really excited about the work that you're doing. As an artist of color, I'm particularly interested in understanding how you're making the connections between this musical theater music that sometimes doesn't seem like it connects to people of color, but you have somehow made it sing in a different way.
It saved my life. Theater saved my life. My childhood was traumatic. And the thing that got me out was that, and the people who were involved with theater, it was the people, it was the activity, it was the environment that literally changed the trajectory of my life. And so it's been my life's mission to bring all of those worlds together through this conduit. And I've been chipping away at it for years. I've been chipping away. I had a deal in the 90s, an R&B deal in the 90s, where they didn't even want me to talk about my theater stuff because it was the kiss of death. And I lived through that. So I know what that is about. But you must honor the truth of who you are for better or for worse. You can't change that. And so that's what I'm trying to do. And it looks like it's going all right.
I can tell you one thing. I know you're paying it forward.
India Reed's out there, y'all.
Oh, India! Woo! Thanks for coming. I know that you're paying it forward. You say that the people in theater saved your life. I know you're doing that. I know you're doing that for kids who are watching you, listening to your albums, coming to see you on Broadway or on tour. And I know that you have changed people's lives.
I'm trying. Thank you.
And
Thank you very much.
Yeah. We're going to take another question.
Yeah, I have one question. First of all, Billy, congratulations on your marriage and, of course, on the launching of this new album. And obviously, the legacy of Richard Rodgers speaks for itself. And thank you for bringing these songs to life in your own special way. I want to know what your inspiration is. What gets Billy Porter out of bed every morning? What is it in these very difficult, as you mentioned earlier, challenging times, and in your industry, very competitive days and nights?
Yeah.
What is it that gets you up every morning, that makes you the beautiful, energetic, wonderful, talented, incredible performer that you are?
My mother, first and foremost, Clorinda Jean Johnson Porter Ford. My mother is the strongest, most complete human being I've ever met. You know, she was born with a degenerative disability that has only progressed and worsened to the point where she's now in the Actors Fund nursing home in New Jersey, and slowly, every day, loses more and more mobility.
We're here for you.
That woman has got out of bed every single day of her life and has fought for her life when everybody on the planet said that she shouldn't even bother. I don't know how to be anything else. When you have an example like that, you can't be anything else. The second part of that is the friendships that I've built. You know, my sister's sitting over there. My friends are sitting over here. The people who support me, the family, the chosen family that support me. And last but not least, my husband. I never knew that it could look like this. I didn't grow up. I'm so thankful that I lived long enough to experience this kind of connection and this kind of love. We were told it was impossible. We were told we didn't deserve it. We were told it would never happen, and it's happening. And what else would I do but get up?
I can't think of a more beautiful sentiment to end on. Billy Porter, you are a fantastic, gorgeous human being. You're an incredible artist. We are all blessed to know you, and I'm so thrilled that the world gets to hear this new incarnation of your life's work.
Thank you.
You so much.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
I adore Billy so much, and this is his moment for sure. He is busier and more in demand than ever, but please rest assured I'm working on getting him back in the studio for a new conversation about his place in the world spotlight for playing the brilliant, fascinating role of Pray Tell on Pose, and as a fashion icon. We saw each other on Tony Night, and he remains as beautiful a soul as ever. And speaking of beautiful and legendary, any fan of musical theater is aware of the character of Christine Daae in The Phantom of the Opera, which was created by Sarah Brightman. The character was written for her by her then husband, Lord Andrew Lloyd Webber. And over 30 years later, she can still hit those high notes. But of course, she's done so much more than just Phantom. She has toured the world, earning over 180 gold and platinum sales awards across 40 plus different countries, and has achieved really unprecedented crossover status in the pop and classical worlds. So it was September of 2018 when I sat down with Sarah Brightman, and I'm thrilled to bring you this conversation about her album Hymn.
You guys! Sarah Brightman, wow. Welcome to Build, and thank you so much for agreeing to come and sit down with me to talk about this glorious new collection.
Oh, well, thank you very much for inviting me. I'm very happy to be here. It's great.
This is a product of 2 years of work, and you can hear it. The sound is so full and so cinematic, as Frank said in that clip. It also has an intimacy about it that makes me feel like, as a listener, I'm in the room with you. How do you balance out that desire for grandiosity and also achieve that intimacy?
I think with this album, I got to the point I'd actually come off the Russian space program. I came out of it, and I went and found a beach and worked with a wonderful vocal coach and to get myself grounded again. And during this time, my producer rang me and he said, "Sarah, it's time. You need to start recording again." And he said, "What do you want to do? You've obviously been enlightened in some way." And I said, "I want to work with lots of human beings, make a joyous sound. I don't want anything dark, anything dangerous, something that reminds me of my childhood and the church I went to and wonderful, warm human being feelings. So he said, that's great, because I was thinking of choirs. So we started working with choirs, which is a very grandiose thing, but yet is very human, but at the same time, the choir sound is very heavenly. So we got intimate, we got grand. And working through these, all of these lots of songs, we went through lots of songs. It was just a process of elimination of what really suited me, what was good for me at this particular time in my particular headspace. And it ended up being very eclectic, the album, and that's what him is.
Yeah. You've been working with Frank for a long time, your producer. Is it true that this track, the title track, was on a mixtape that he made for you in the 80s?
It was. Actually, when I first heard about Frank, because he co-produced the Enigma project, which was out years ago, and I heard it and got hold of him. And he said, look, I don't know if you're going to like what songs I suggest to you, but I'll put on what was a cassette tape then. And I was actually driving up Highway 1 in Los Angeles, and I had a Chrysler LeBaron, had an open top, it was beautiful weather, and I put this cassette tape in not knowing what to expect. And the first song was him, which is an old Barclay James Harvest track, which I knew and I loved and I'd actually forgotten about. And I thought, this is cool. This is an interesting producer to think of this. But in fact, because I wasn't in that place to do a song like that at that time, all these years later, now I'm doing it, and it's the perfect title track for this album. So it just shows how music and songs have their timing in your life.
Absolutely. And I love that it's representative of a sort of then and now, a long relationship, creative relationship. And I can feel and hear the depth of that partnership too.
Yes.
In all of these beautiful pieces. You sing in many languages.
I do.
And a lot of them are represented on this album. Do you speak all those languages as well?
I speak a little of a lot of languages, including only a little of my own that well. So I'm one of these kind of, I'm a bit like a parrot. I can pick things up really quickly if I'm in a country, but I forget them just as quickly. But when you're singing and learning, it's actually a very useful thing to have, because you listen and you grasp the meaning of everything. And so I found that very useful especially in the classical training that I've done.
Do you, how do you decide whether to sing a song in its language of origin or to translate it into English?
I found that most songs, if they're better in their original language, as soon as you start translating them, it doesn't have the same spice to it somehow.
Sure.
And you have to work with really clever lyricists to get that. And even sometimes they say, you know what, it's not as good as the original.
Yeah. The work that I first came to know you for was, of course, Phantom of the Opera.
Yes.
I saw it when I was a little girl, and I continued to go and see it. In fact, I got to be at the gala presentation of the 30th anniversary of Phantom, where you performed your signature song, and it's so lovely to see that you continue to be a part of that Phantom family.
Yes, I mean, it's beautiful, that musical. I take my nieces to go and see it, and it's lovely to see through their eyes, in the younger generation, it's still a beautiful jewel, that the Phantom of the Opera, the actual piece. And I feel very privileged that I had, the composer Andrew Lloyd Webber, actually, I was kind of his muse for the writing of a lot of that. And it was written for my voice and my type of voice. So to actually see women that take on the role of Christine take it forward is very exciting for me. I love it.
And that high note, that's an E6?
It might be an E flat. I can't remember. Something like that. D or an E flat.
It is a high note. And it's a good thing it was written for your voice, because I don't know a lot of people who can hit it. But they keep finding them. And the Christines keep that legacy alive.
Yes.
I want to also talk about the fact that you have this classical training and this beautiful operatic sound, but you also have a history of success with pop music. And I feel like sometimes I can hear you consciously turn off your training and sing. I believe in something that I read, you said it was like, sometimes you have to sing like you're standing on the beach and just let your voice out to the water. Can you talk about when you use your operatic trained voice, when you use your sort of more naturalistic voice, and how you decide which is a better fit for each song?
I think that when you choose songs, obviously it's if you're covering a song, for example, it's written in a certain style, so you know from that whether it should be very intimate and, you know, although one shouldn't always, you put some air through the chords, as we say, which gives it that more pop approach, which is a style. But then obviously the pieces that you do by Puccini or whatever classical composer, obviously that's asking for a very different type of voice. And there is a form to classical singing, and it's a trained form, and you need to adhere to that to actually create the sound that the piece that the classical composer was writing for the voice to fit to that.
Do you sing at home? Or is it just a work thing?
No, I do sing at home. I sing in the shower. I do all the normal things that human beings do. I hum, I sing out of tune, I do all sorts of stuff. But
what do you like to sing when you're just alone at home? What do you put on the radio and sing along to?
Well, it's a guilty secret. I actually like doing things that remind me of my childhood from the 60s and the 70s. I find that, for me, that was a very interesting time for music. It became very open for people to actually experiment and do what they wanted to do. So there are all these amazing groups, especially in the 70s, that came up, and David Bowie, and there was Pink Floyd and Queen and all of these things, which, of course, that was my teenager era, so I'll tend to go back to those things.
I understand that you also sometimes, when you're traveling, you go out clubbing.
I do. I find it... Well, I did spend most of the early 90s, actually. I was working in Germany with Frank at that time, and it was quite an interesting life, because I used to go to Italy in the week to work on my voice there with Italian training, and then at weekends I would go back to Hamburg to record. I'd spend my nights in the German dance halls and dance clubs, and of course then there are all the early DJs, which really were absolutely amazing. It was the beginning of it all. So it's been actually fun, my career, because I've done a lot of dance tracks, if you like, in it, and it's been accepted. And I've been always in the dance charts for something that I've been doing, alongside having this wonderful classical crossover career.
I just feel like you're so, like, you've been performing forever.
I know.
And yet you still have this youthful energy, and I think that comes through. It's, again, I keep talking about this album as a study in contrasts, whether it's the grandiosity combined with the intimacy, whether it's it has this timelessness, but it also feels really modern. And then there's this maturity about it that also still has that little sparkle, that little flicker of youthfulness that I think it's fire.
Oh, you're lovely. You're doing a lovely interview. Thank you so much.
Well,
I'll come here again if I'm invited.
It's
nice.
a dream to sit down with you, because when I was a little girl, I was listening to you and imagining that maybe someday I'd be able to hit that high note.
Oh,
I never got there, but yeah, it's a thrill to just be in the room with you.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're
very
welcome.
much.
Let's talk about this tour that's happening. You are going to be going on tour for 2 years, 125 plus performances.
Don't tell me, I won't get up and do it.
Oh, no, I was going to say, how in the world do you motivate? Maybe you motivate by pretending you're not doing it. I don't know.
Do you know, the thing is about touring, I tend to take a lot of time between tours, because otherwise I'll do a few concerts, more classical type concerts around the world between that time to keep my hand in, if you like. But I tend to give gaps so that I have the energy and the passion, because you can lose the passion when you're on tour, because it's exhausting. But you know, when I go, I don't think about how long it's going to go. I just enjoy the journey. I enjoy the country I get to. I enjoy meeting new friends. I enjoy meeting fans. I enjoy the whole thing day by day. And suddenly it's all done. And you think, how did I get through that? But I feel incredibly lucky that I'm able to go around the globe and do these things, because I get to see and understand all these different cultures, and everybody's great to me. I'm very lucky.
Is there anywhere you've never visited that you're dying to go, or have you just been everywhere at this point?
I've probably been to all the main cities. I can't think of anywhere particularly at this moment, but there must be quite a few.
You've never been to Antarctica, have you?
No, that's one I do want to go, but I want to go, I want to go in that ship that takes you there. I would just be, a friend of mine's just done it, and he said it was absolutely amazing, and I must do it.
And you have to sing while you're there, so then you can say that you've performed on all 7 continents.
Exactly.
What are you looking forward to most about touring? I mean, I know you just mentioned some things. Anything you left out?
Do you know, I think when you create an album, and I'm always thinking of the tours at the same time, you need to kind of get it out. So to actually go on tour is actually a big relief, because everything that you've been thinking in your mind for a few years suddenly can be out there visually, audibly, everything. And it's kind of each show I do, it's a sort of relief that I've done it, because I've done it for that audience, which, if they want to, they've been waiting for it.
Do you travel with choirs? Are you using a big choirs on the stage in this?
Do you know, this time it's been quite interesting. We've actually done a film cinema event of the new album and retrospective and part of it of my old work. It's not going to be exactly like the tour, but it was a very interesting event, and I learned a huge amount from it about really what I wanted and what I didn't want in the tour itself. But I feel with the tour, I'm going to be putting it into 2 halves. So the first half will be more like you're going to see the opera. There are scenes, and I've got a storyline in my head, and beautiful costumes. They're all sort of like they're runway gowns, but I've done things to them, so they become more of the scene that I want to have. Like I've got a modern runway gown which looks like something, I've made it look like something that Anne Boleyn would have worn all of that time ago. So it's got there's a real fusion approach to it. And then the second half, I've got obviously the orchestra and the band on stage with me with this huge choir behind me, rather than being more in the background. And because this album for me was about hope and light and good things in life, because I sometimes feel we're a little bit dystopian at the moment in the world, and that's why I wanted to do something like this. So I've created, or I'm being helped to create, an amazing lighting for it, so that people feel very, very ebullient and just enjoy it in the way that this picture looks, really. It's reaching out to the heavens, and it's about human beings.
This is like glam to the max. I feel like you look kind of like an Oscar,
Yes,
and an impressionist painting. Every woman needs a version of this, I think, at some point in her life. You're back in New York right now doing press for the album. I know you were here, obviously, for a long time doing theater. What are your favorite things to do when you're visiting New York, when you're back?
I love New York. I actually have an apartment here, a very small apartment, which for me, when I get into it, it's just great. I think, oh, good, I'm home. And I go and I love eating the food here. I love the whole buzz in this city. I love the park. I don't know, there's every time I come here, I have a wonderful, wonderful time. And I love New Yorkers. They're out there and they tell you what you think. And it's very different to us in England, who are all like, oh, I'm not quite sure, and very polite and,
Do you get recognized when you go out in the park on the
not
street?
at all.
Really?
I
You're
don't
a
get
global superstar. I would expect people would just be mobbing you.
No, I don't look like this when I'm running around.
Do you go to the theater when you're here?
Yes, sometimes I do. Well, I mean, but do you know what? Nowadays, it's really difficult to get into things because, I mean, Broadway, it's just had this complete resurgence and it's packed, and which I think is an amazing thing because, the city's known for this. And when it's being so successful in that way, I love it. Because there's nothing better to going to see something live and get pulled into that story. I mean, I love movies. I love, love, love them. But at the same time, there's nothing like live theatre. So it's great here for that.
I think my favorite album of yours historically was The Songs That Got Away. And as a theater lover, to hear those numbers that were created by musical theater composers, whether it was Sondheim or Irving Berlin, to get a sense of these. You just did such a service to the theater community by recording those.
Yes, there are always those jewels that aren't quite recognized. And it was actually, I remember I had this big sitting room at the time, drawing room, and the whole place for months, because I did loads of research on it, was littered with scores and things. I was trying to find everything out of them. I think my favorite piece in that was a piece called Meadowlark, which I love to sing. It's so lovely.
One of the great pieces, yes, absolutely.
And then I think there was, I Remember Sky in that Sondheim piece. And, you know, some lovely, lovely, unusual jewels in there.
Yeah, everything you record is gorgeous. I would sound like a broken record if I just went through your entire catalog. Every time I hear that pure tone come out of you, I wonder, how in the world do you maintain it? Especially when you're touring through different time zones and you've got to be like, if you're flying, you've got the weird air in the airplanes, and plus just the effort you have to put into create those noises. Do you have secret, like, tea and honey combinations, warm-ups you do? Are you steaming your voice? It's got to be like an Olympic athlete in terms of the endurance.
There's no secret to it. It is just about the in-between times that I have between tours, albums, all the things I do, and even when I'm doing them, I work with vocal coaches continually. And my mind is always on it, because that's what defines me, is my voice, really. You can have all the ideas, but if that's not working. So I sleep huge amounts. I have a lovely life, but it's not a party life in any way, apart from obviously going to clubs. But you're not talking there. You're just dancing and getting rid of energy. I eat very carefully. I do everything possible to protect. When I go on the plane, I have a special little mask I wear. It's very easy. It's not expensive, but it works. It keeps the moisture going. And I keep as far away as I can from colds, flu injection. I do all of the stuff you can. And that's all you can do. But I've managed very well with it through the years. And as I said, the most important thing is the training and having a second pair of ears work with you all the time.
I hope you've got those vocal cords well insured. That's not a question.
I don't know if I do.
Well, you definitely should. You definitely should.
Thank you.
If I asked you what your favorite track from the album is, do you have one, or is it one of these things where it's like choosing between your children?
Do you know, although it's an unusual one, there's a beautiful piece called Fly to Paradise. And I actually had a huge amount of trouble getting Frank to do this piece, because he said, I can't see how it can work, because it was originally written by a gentleman called Eric Whittaker, who is like the choir meister of the world at the moment. He's writing all these wonderful pieces for choir. He's a modern composer for choir, and all the choirs love him. And I heard this piece, which I think, if I'm not mistaken, he wrote originally for a musical about 10 years ago. And I heard the piece, I thought, that is such a beautiful piece of work, and I wanted to work with it. So I got Frank to just start on it. And by the end of it, he said, actually, this is one of the best pieces on the album. And I hope that Eric's happy with it, because I've been talking to him for years, just on the phone and meeting up and whatever. And so finally, I've been able to do one of his pieces. So.
Yeah, I loved hearing about, in some of the interviews that I've read, about how you and Frank have this push and pull about sometimes he'll want to do something and you're not sure about it, and you want to do something. But I think that's what makes for a great partnership that, again, encompasses so many seemingly contradicting characteristics.
Yes, no, you're right about that. I mean, there are many partners. I'm not saying I'm Lennon and McCartney or anything as grand as that. But you find that often partnerships, they argue a huge amount. And one is black, one is white. But it's actually very good that when the two do come together, they both of their ideas create a particular flavor, and often an audience really enjoy that. You can feel the tug within the work. It makes it interesting.
Yeah, tension in art, I think, is necessary.
It is very necessary.
Don't want it to be too easy.
No.
We're going to give a couple of audience members a chance to ask some questions.
Okay, thank you.
Where are we starting?
Hi. Over here. Hello.
Oh, hi.
Hi. I'm right here.
Hi.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm super excited to listen to your album. I was just wondering who some of your artistic influences are.
Oh, so many. I mean, when I was much younger, on the classical side, I loved Joan Sutherland's voice. I was absolutely fascinated by it because of the beauty and the tone she had. And artistic ability she had, and also the training that she did. She was incredible for me. I think probably the group which kind of got me into the whole idea of wanting to do something very theatrical with my music actually didn't so much come from theatre. It came from Pink Floyd, because it was themed, and I love themes, and I always theme everything that I do. So they were two examples from either end.
I
Thank
love
you.
the idea of you like rocking out to Dark Side of the Moon.
Oh, I loved it at that time.
Yeah.
Well, I hope I don't sound old here. But those pieces, they're timeless. You could put them on anywhere and people love them.
I
So.
love an album that you can listen to front to back,
Yes.
It's still good if you put it on shuffle, but the full experience is track one all the way through the
Yes,
end.
I love
That's
it.
how I listened to this one, and I think it's a full work,
Thank
We
you.
have time for one more question.
Hi, hello. Here again.
Oh, there you are. Sorry. Hi.
I wanted to know, how important is your posture when singing opera, and what are like some tricks or life hacks that you've learned?
Do you know, lot of the time I don't get it right because I'm in a form of tension, and you continually have to work with this. It's very, very important that the spine is straight, the shoulders are relaxed, so that it gives room for the lungs to move in the way that they should. I feel that the form is important because it's almost as if I feel the sound from just behind my spine, and it feels as if it's going up right through the center, and the sound sort of has to feel, because of the posture, as if it's something that's inside of you. So you're not grasping at notes and biting them and all of those things. And of course, none of us are perfect in this, and I make mistakes all the time. But that's the perfect way that, I like to sing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The way that you talk about the sound as if it's something separate from you, it feels like something otherworldly. It feels like it's something that is from, it like almost makes you, it connects with the heavens, And I think what a perfect place to end in bringing it back around to the concept of light and about spirituality. Hymn is out November 9th. Sarah Brightman, it has been a true honor to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you to all of you.
Wow, I love hearing those interviews back from my archives. That was Sarah Brightman. I'm Laura Heywood, and it was recorded live at Build Series NYC. I want to thank you so much for your support in this show. I'm having a blast with live guests and all of these great archived interviews, revisiting some of my favorite people over my long broadcasting career. I may in the future go back as far as, I don't know, maybe some of my sports talk interviews from like the early 2000s. Thanks for being a part of the show. This is Laura Heywood Interviews, and I'm Laura Heywood.